Mondo, we all set? Run a little test on it. Go live. Call the desk. Go live. Click test. Run it. Have to do a little sound check. Have to tell you the picture straight. And then delete it after it's all done. Just say LASD testing. Make sure the desk is ready to watch.
okay if I hear notes? Hey, it's Andrew. I've just connected Access 3. Do you want to pull it up and see how it sounds? So I'll give you a test here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Getting ready for the governor's briefing at about 10:15. All right, should be. Yep. It does. It's showing audio go through. Sorry, it has to be this one. She's probably doing a news update right now. No. I mean, she could normally, but I don't have any headphones out here.
I would guess ballpark 10 minutes. They're still being briefed, so it'll be a couple. That's my guess. Okay.
It's going to be about another 10 minutes before they start here. Yeah, 10-minute heads up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, sounds good. Bye.
We're moving. We're going to move all these folks outside, and we can start in just a few minutes. So almost there.
Just a heads up, we got a 5-minute warning. People are being seated now.
those of you who weren't here earlier, there's going to be about 10 minutes of remarks, and we will take questions afterwards. It's going to be pretty tight because we got to get to the funeral, but we will take a few. I believe that Cal Fire Chief Ken Hemlott will be up first. Yeah. They're about to walk out, so folks can clear the stage card or push further that way. Inbound. The governor, the fire chief, the secretary, the director,
The way they got us angled, we were dealing with shadows and sunlight, and we just need to get them to the podium, and then I think we'll be fine. But you let me know.
right here next to Mark. No problem. Secretary will put you right there.
All right.
Actually, you guys want to slide over a little bit? That way we can even it out. You want to stay over just a little bit more then?
I normally stand next to Warren, but he's not here.
No, we won't.
All right, good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Mark Ghilarducci. I'm Governor Brown's Director of the Office of Emergency Services. First of all, let me say that we remain heartbroken and concerned for all those who have been impacted by these fires. And you're the reason why we're continuing to having 24/7 operations, not only here in the community, but up in Sacramento at the State Operations Center. We continue to have resources committed, and we're moving fast. And as we are still dealing with the fire response of actual suppression, we're now moving into the recovery phase. We know that there have been a number of structures lost, and there have been lives lost. And so we want to work expeditiously to address all of the concerns that are there. Early on, the governor did proclaim a state of emergency and requested federal assistance, and the president did provide and approve a federal major disaster declaration. And we've been appreciative of that effort, and we're appreciative of FEMA's engagement. And moving forward through the recovery process, we'll establish, working with the county, local assistance centers, to be able to have everybody come in and figure out what kind of support and assistance that they can provide for those who have lost homes or businesses. Today we have a number of senior officials here that we're going to start off with, and I think what we're going to do is start off with the Director of the California Department of Forestry and Fire, CAL FIRE, Chief Ken Pemlott, to give us an update on the firefight. Chief Pemlott.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. So as you may have noticed, we're on the backside of the significant winds. As they die down, we are still, though, in very dry, critical fire weather conditions for the next several days throughout California. We're looking forward to some more moisture coming, some onshore flow, and in a few days, and potentially over the Thanksgiving holiday, a low pressure coming in with some precipitation. In the short term, we're going to continue the firefight. We're going to continue to maintain the battle rhythm we're on, because we are still in fire season throughout California. This morning, there are 9,400 firefighters on the fire lines. During this siege that started last week, we have burned over 242,000 acres. And as of this morning, we have just short of 11,000 structures destroyed in the fire siege, including the Camp Fire in Northern California and the Woolsey and Hill Fire here in Southern California. Firefighters from across the United States have poured in to support the efforts here in California. The Woolsey Fire here, great progress. Containment numbers are coming up. We continue to engage. We will look at our resource needs throughout the state over the course of the next several days, and certainly utilize all of the resources and move resources around where they need to be to put all of these fires to bed. Fire season continues, though. We continue to have new fires start. Early this morning, the Briggs Fire started just east of here near Santa Paula. That fire this morning is about 50 acres. Firefighters are making good progress. So we continue to engage in the firefight. We continue to keep our eye on the ball. Again, thank you to all of the folks that have engaged in this firefight and everybody supporting the effort across California. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next up, we're happy to have our Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior here with us, Secretary Zinke. Ask him to come up and give a few words. Secretary.
This is my fourth time to California, all of which have been fires. And every time I come back, I say this is the worst fire I've seen. Yesterday is the worst fire I've seen. This comes from a kid who grew up in Montana, right next to Glacier Park. Paradise, unfortunately, likely will not be the same city. Just the amount of devastation. And all fires are bad. This fire is also unprecedented in a lot of ways. The governor and I, we did tours. We'll do tours today. My role is to make sure the federal resources are here, well coordinated. And up front, I just want to say thank you to our law enforcement officials, our first responders. And you forget, if you look at the Paradise Fire, very difficult to go in and out. And our local firefighters, sometimes we forget that their fires, the fire affects their homes, their families are at risk, and yet they're in the front line. In the case of Paradise, it's almost like an Iraqi war where they were defending a parking lot. They had civilians inside commercial buildings. They were surrounding the commercial buildings with people in it, defending space to save lives. Similar here, phenomenal, fantastic job of evacuating this many people without incident. So bravo Zulu to our sheriff's department, our responders, to make sure that was done safely. Going forward, the governor and I agree, and there's no silver bullet for these fires. The seasons have gotten longer. The temperatures are hotter. We're in the midst of a historic drought. The tree density has become greater. The amount of underbrush is great. The fuel load, but the solution is working together. And the commitment of, when you're talking about the parks here and our public lands, it's a mishmash of federal land and state land and private land and communities and counties. And we all have to work together as a team to make sure that we prevent this from happening again. It's unsustainable to have this happen year after year, or have a season like this where you have 100,000 acre fires becoming routine. We're a great nation. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an American issue, and we should address it as such. But it's going to take working together from the community all the way up to the federal government and making sure that we do active forest management, we prioritize infrastructure, public safety, roads, evacuation, and work together as a team. And the governor and I yesterday committed that we will work together as a team. This is not the time for finger pointing. This is the time to make sure that we address putting out the fire. We look at Paradise to make sure we look at who's unaccountable, make sure we give aid where it's necessary, and begin the recovery process. In some cases, this is going to be long. So with that, I'd like to introduce the great governor from the great state of California. Despite the rumors, we get along. We talk a lot. We talk a lot before this incident. We talk on water. We talk on fires. We talk on forest management. We even talk about his dog Calypso. So with that, Governor of California.
And we even talked to President Trump yesterday, both of us. So we are truly working together to serve our people. This is a tragedy again, not just here, but up in Northern California. Not the new normal, the new abnormal. Fires, dryness, the lack of moisture, the heat, the winds, almost the hurricane speeds. So we have our work cut out for us. It's so beautiful here, but having so many people living in this space, we are going to have to make a lot of changes. But first of all, thank you to all the first responders, firefighters, lifeguards, police personnel, sheriffs. Everybody's been doing a great job. And yes, I would say also the California inmates that are working with you. So it's really people pulling together, and that's the first part, the emergency response. Next, we got to recover, and that recovery will happen. The state will help. The federal government is helping. President Trump told me on the telephone yesterday that he's completely behind California in getting this recovery underway. And I think the same can be said for the state government and then, of course, your local governments. Going forward, we are going to have to take a lot of steps that aren't so easy. We're going to have to manage our forests better. We're going to have to build our cities more smartly. We're going to have to build shelters so that people can escape when these terrible fires get out of hand. And yes, we're going to have to deal with climate change. All of that, many elements. We got to get on the side of nature. We can't just fight it. And we do that in many ways. And it will be expensive. We're not talking hundreds of millions. We're talking tens of billions for the whole state of California. But it can be done with science, with research, with collaboration, and with a lot of goodwill. We all pull together in solidarity, keeping California green, keeping it a wonderful place that we all love. So thank you very much.
Questions? Okay, we can take some questions now for any of the leaders.
Question for the governor.
Okay.
Mr. Governor, considering the origin of this fire, the Woolsey fire, the area of the Santa Susana Field lab, that contaminated site, radioactive chemical contamination, toxic substances control was supposed to have that site cleaned up by last year. Will this fire finally be the motivation to finish the cleanup of that dangerous site?
Yes.
When will it happen?
It'll happen as soon as possible. I have to say, cleaning up these toxic sites, not so easy. We got a lot of them, and one of those sites was around when I was governor the first time. So, yeah, we know it's not that easy, but this fire should wake everyone up. We'll do it all that I can between now and January 6th, and after that, we'll pass the baton to Mr. Newsom, and I'm sure you ought to direct your question, because he will follow up. If he doesn't, I'll talk to him.
Do you believe the assurances that the area is safe, that we're not getting radioactive?
Do I believe? I'm very skeptical about all assurances.
Let me address in the Paradise fire. The fire went through older mining claims, so it is a concern on watershed. Some of those mining claims have been stripped of vegetation. That means the sulfites are going to be exposed. Hazardous material not only from the mining claims but the town itself. We have not evaluated this fire, but it's likely the watershed is going to have to be monitored very closely, and this is working with all parties to make sure as the hazardous material from businesses, from other sites, from previous activity, we mitigate the watersheds, starting from the ocean all the way back. As the rains come, we have to be very, very careful and mitigate where we can to make sure that hazardous waste doesn't go into our watersheds.
Secretary, we talked to some people worried about their insurance. What can the state of California do to ensure that the insurances do their part, coverage, and ensure the citizens?
Well, we have an insurance commissioner, and we have the attorney general, who is the guardian of the public trust and also enforces laws against consumer, misrepresentation or nonconformity to the state law. So, look, we'll do all that we can. Homeowners ought to contact their insurance, of course. FEMA can help. Our Office of Emergency Services can help. But if there's real violation, then we go to the Attorney General. What? Have you ever heard of the term the coincidence of opposites? Check it out. Yeah. Look, President Trump told me that they're going to do everything possible to help California in this time of need. So, look, there's a lot of statements, a lot of loose rhetoric, but I think we're on the right path right now, and we're going to all work together.
Governor, I understand you're going to the funeral service with
Yes.
the sergeant that was involved with the
Yeah.
borderline.
Yes.
You know, this area had two terrible things happen at the same time, fires and that shooting. Could you speak to us a little bit about that?
Well, it's a double tragedy, and a lot of people suffer the loss of loved ones, and it leaves a scar that is not easily healed. But in time, it will, and at this point, it's so very important that we pull together as a local community and as a state of California. Things happen. Tragedies occur. That's part of what being human is. But it's also being human to bind up our wounds and to do everything we can in solidarity.
Governor, it's expensive to fight all these fires. I guess have we reached a point where the state of California really can't afford any more wildfires like this because it's just expensive to do so?
Well, it's not a question, can we afford it? There are fires, and there are going to be more fires. The temperature's changing, the moisture's reducing, the winds are increasing. There will be more, and they're going to get more expensive. Luckily, we are a rich state, but we got to take intelligent precautions in how we design our cities. The zoning and the planning has to take into account the threat of fires, the building of appropriate shelters so people can always find a way to escape, and then, of course, all the things we're doing to mitigate climate change. All of it. It's a big agenda. What you're paying this week is just a very small fraction of the investment needed over the next years and decades. All right.
On the cost. As Interior, I got a bill for $870 million this year, and that did not include firefighting. That included repair of infrastructure from Whiskeytown, et cetera. That's $870 million. The cost for fighting fires is going to be in the billions, and yet our parks that we all love and appreciate are being loved to death. I would have rather spent that money, quite frankly, on trail systems, on fuel reduction, on so many other things. And you're right, it's unsustainable and unacceptable that we have loss of life every year, that our firefighters are out there in the front lines risking their lives, and we have local communities being ravaged. There's things we can do and we should do. We should look at the tree mortality. We should remove the dead and dying trees. We should prioritize around communities to make sure the fuel loads are reduced. There's no silver bullet, and this problem didn't happen overnight. You can do prescribed burns late in the season. If you look at Yosemite National Park, we're collecting dead and dying trees, we're stacking them, returning the health of the forest, and doing prescribed burns late in the season. We need some help from our state friends to make sure that we do prescribed burns, that we have some exemptions for air quality. But I can tell you the air quality up there in these catastrophic burns is far worse than doing prescribed burns. But I think the consensus is, and I don't want to speak to the governor, but I'm sure the state of California wants healthy forests. They enjoy living in California because it's a great place to live. During the summer months, you want to be out hiking and kayaking and fishing rather than evacuating your homes. So again, the solution is working together all the way from the local community. And lastly, Brock Long was with me yesterday, the director of FEMA, and from his words is sometimes the federal government in Washington doesn't really know what the community needs. So the priority should be coming from Malibu about what you guys need. And so our federal government commitment is to listen to local communities. So as we make decisions on where resources should be made, we should be listening to you and not the other way around.
Mr. Zinke, does the long-term solution require thinking outside of the box, relocating communities inside high fire risk areas so that we can allow fires to burn naturally as they occur, so we don't have disasters when they occur in high winds?
You know, that's a solution set that you have to work with the governors and the local communities. From my perspective, I prefer an active management plan. We know there's some things that we can do. We can remove the dead and dying trees. The beetle kill has been significant. The density of trees, those are management things. And you use best science, you use best practices in order to create predictability and better stewardship. And we have great people if we empower them to do that. We have great scientists, we have great forestry guys, but our philosophy is to empower our superintendents in our front line and empower our firefighting officials. And they'll tell you is that we need to make sure that some of these older roads that have been atrophied over time that haven't allowed access to the forest, we need to make sure they do have access. So if you get a lightning strike, they can get to it. Look at fire breaks, and sometimes we need to look at an ecosystem rather than just an isolated federal lands or state lands, because we're all connected. So you'll look at an ecosystem where you need fire breaks, where development shouldn't take place, where development should be rethought, and that's working with our state and local officials to coming up with a plan so this doesn't happen every year. We're a good country. I'd say we're a great country, but our greatness is working together and not working in opposition of each other.
Are you putting a plan together for we don't have a Montecito, mudslides, the rains are coming. We have a lot of land, more so that's burned now. What's the plan?
Yeah, I think the threat is real, particularly in this fire about landslides, hazardous material. So we are working with local, county, and state officials to make sure we have a plan and mitigate it. As the governor said, it's going to be expensive, but I can tell you this fire is expensive. So the investment on preventative measures, and investing in more management, better management based on science, is a lot better investment than having this occur to our communities 3 or 4 times a year across the state.
Okay, let's go get it. 2 more questions.
I don't have a specific update other than it did not a serious injury. Individual was impacted by a vehicle while in camp, obviously transported to the hospital. We are obviously taking full care of that individual. Firefighter was from out of state, so we're working with our partners to ensure all of that. We are very fortunate with all of these incidents that the injury rates have been low, but these have been difficult fires to fight, and we are ensuring for everyone's safety, first and foremost, and certainly with that individual as he makes the recovery.
Okay, one more question.
Well, I've been looking at these fires for many years now, and this is another instance of real devastation. And compared to the north, it's a little different, but for the people who lost their homes, the fear, and the ones who actually lost loved ones, yeah, it's hard to find words to express what I feel and what we're all feeling. So I'm glad we're all here, and it is bringing a spirit of cooperation that's greater than I've seen. So that's a real positive.
Thank you very much.